It's absolutely apptacular. The Subject Cinema Android app. Everything you need to be a rabid Subject Cinema fan. Subject Cinema, 3-Minute Weekend, Tuesday Digidex, and Front Row 5 and 10. All right at your fingertips and available instantly. Plus, email and voicemail links, Facebook and Twitter hookups, Patreon support specials, and more is coming real soon. Don't just listen, app it. The all-in-one Subject Cinema podcast app. Android version available now at Google Play or on PNR Network websites. Amazon and iPhone apps coming soon. Don't delay. Download today.
Blueberry. This podcast is a member of the Blueberry Network. Blueberry. No E's. That's Blueberry, BLUBRRY.com. Blueberry.com.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Honey?
Yeah.
Will you come here for a minute?
Okay. What's up?
Where did you get this? This is the ugliest picture I've ever seen. Who is this supposed to be?
Found it.
Uh-huh.
Who is it supposed to be?
Stacy?
No, it's not supposed to be Stacy. There's no horns.
Oh, well, true. Silly me.
There's no horns, and the painting, hello, is in the sunlight. It would have totally burst into flames if it was Stacy.
Oh, well, yeah, there is that.
Hey, Stacy. Well, it's just, it just spoke to me. It just said...
It spoke to you as in...
it said by me. It was interesting. It caught my eye and dragged it across the room. It really hurt.
I'm not hanging this anywhere anybody can see it. Maybe we should hide it in the attic.
We don't have an attic.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well. Anyway, it's more horror stuff as Halloween month continues.
Yeah.
Maybe you can figure out what this week's show is from that little lame-ass routine.
We're pretty sure you can. You're a smart bunch.
Plus, we got the usual stuff with the 13 report. Kim has a classic for us. We have a haunted classics. We'll say goodbye to Tom Petty and a lot more. All right here, right now. I'm T.C. Kirkham.
I'm Kim Brown.
It's Scream Screams once again
on Subject Cinema.
Screams! Celebrating a decade of film podcasting, lasting out of B-Town, USA. You're tuned into Subject Cinema with T.C. Kirkham and Kim Brown.
Directive.
Oh, behave. Yeah.
I volunteer as tribute.
Suppose you run your business and let me run mine. Here's looking at you, kid.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome T.C. and Kim.
No, I am not playing it again this week. I played it last week. You're going to have to do that for the whole month.
Fine.
Honestly.
But it is the most wonderful time of the year. For me.
For you.
For me.
Welcome to Subject Cinema. I'm T.C. Kirkham.
Hi, I'm Kim Brown.
Subject Cinema day and date, October 9th, 2017. Sorry we're a day late. We had a little bit of stuff going on yesterday, but we have a 3-day weekend. So Columbus Day, the day we celebrate the man who came over here and changed America forever.
Yeah.
In all manners of ways.
That's one way to put it.
Not in a very PC way anymore.
Well, no, it's a more important holiday than that. Even more important than that. Well, besides the fact that it's Thanksgiving in Canada, so hey to all our Canadian listeners.
Is?
Yes, it is Thanksgiving in Canada.
I thought that was November 1st. Anyway,
no.
Okay.
Today is Leif Erikson Day. Hooray!
The Viking or the actor?
The Viking. Does that mean we get to drink like Norsemen? Ooh, that would be cool. Does that
Out
mean
on the High Chaparral. Oh, no, sorry. You guys don't remember that. You're
Good
too young.
Grief, you're old.
I knew that was coming. It is Subject Cinema number 585. We do apologize, as I said, for being a day late because we had some stuff going on Sunday. But we are still able to get this up and going.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to ask you how your week was. We're just going to say we will address what happened in Las Vegas at the end of the show. Mm-hmm. It's just terrible, and we'll get into that later. We are celebrating horror all month long. We have a horror host we're going to bring up that everybody knows, and we got a few other things going on. As far as Halloween goes, what is your favorite idea for a costume this year, my darling?
Costume, gosh, I don't know. I mean, the ideas that I always have in my head for what I'd love to dress as, I mean...
Don't always go with what you'd like to do for you in real life.
Nope, because what I see in my head looks great, and then the cold light of reality pierces because I'm looking in a mirror and going, nope.
Cold light and reality, I can go as Jabba the Hutt, you can go as Sadness. With blue, well, just get you some blue makeup.
Yeah, so that's the sad. That is really the sad thing. If you gave me a little blue makeup and dyed my hair blue, and a white sweater, I would be perfect for Sadness.
You just need to get the voice down.
I can even do the voice if I try really hard.
Sort of, I guess.
Remember that funny part in the movie when the dog died? Either that or Mrs. Claus, which is Mrs. Santa Claus.
Which version of Mrs. Claus?
Huh?
Like which version? There's been all different versions of Mrs. Claus. I like the one from Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. She's kind of a funny dip.
I'm going to throw this computer
What?
at
I'm
your
being
head
honest.
in a
Of
minute.
all the different portrayals, she's been the most enjoyable.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I have the imagination to do a lot of cool stuff, but I don't have the body for it. To quote Indiana Jones, "It's not the years, honey; it's the mileage." What about you?
Oh, well, I don't know. I can go as Justin Bieber, I suppose.
What? Why?
I don't know. I don't think I look good enough anymore.
I am completely gobsmacked.
This is me just trying to get these reactions.
I mean, I actually had an idea for who you could go as, and I think you do a good job.
Oh?
But yeah, sure. Seriously.
Oh, really?
No, seriously.
Do tell.
No, I mean it. Get you like a nice dapper suit and a top hat and an umbrella and a monocle and a cigarette holder. You'd make a perfect penguin.
Oh, I thought you were going for Mr. Peanut. I'm going to be like, I'm going to hurt you.
No, I didn't mean Mr. Peanut. I think you'd make a really superb penguin. Oh, you'd actually probably do a really good job as Uncle Pennybags, or whatever his name is on the Monopoly board.
Well, I love to play Monopoly, so.
Yeah, you do. So.
All righty.
I'll probably just dress like I usually do. I always dress as a serial killer. They look like everybody else after all.
Yeah, me too.
Pleasant dreams with that thought, kiddies.
Anyway, let's get on to this week's Multivisions.
Yes.
We're going to tackle a story that's been tackled on the screens and in books and in novels and novellas and everything else. It's not really horror, but there are supernatural elements to it that make it perfect for our screen screams as we spotlight the picture of Dorian Gray.
If only the picture could change, and I could be always what I am now. For that I would give everything. There's nothing in the whole world I would not give. I'd give my soul for that.
The vain jealousy which prompted Dorian Gray to utter this fateful prayer was destined to sweep him into a life so fraught with vice and evil that its marks became horrible to behold. For the mad wish of Dorian Gray was granted.
All right, my love. This was your idea. Great idea, because we neither one had seen the original version.
No.
So this was something.
Now, you tend to have a little bit of an issue with this. I suppose we should probably discuss it at the end.
Oh, it's not an issue. It's just that I don't consider it horror.
Well,
it is fantasy because of the supernatural elements, but I don't consider it to be horror, although the picture is horrible.
Yeah.
That's the only horror part of it,
If you think about it on a more esoteric level, but we'll get to that. The picture of Dorian Gray started off existence as a novel written by Oscar Wilde, one of the greatest writers and one of the most notorious people of his time, or probably any other time. He was a brilliant person who unfortunately lived in a time when you could be jailed for being who you were. It was first published in Lippincott's Monthly Magazine way back in July of 1890. The story went through a lot of editing because people were like, gasp, clutch pearls. There were so many parts of it that were considered indecent.
We haven't gotten to the movie yet. Don't talk about pearls.
What?
Well, Donna Reed's in the movie. I figured pearls were associated with it. Well, they were.
Not yet.
All right. Sorry.
Not yet. Anyway, so this novel was published and caused an enormous scandal back in the day. And because pretty much anything Oscar Wilde did caused an enormous scandal back in the day, which I think he actually would have been enormously pleased with, from what I can tell of the guy. The focus that we're going to have during this show is the version that we saw from the 1940s. There have been several.
It's considered the definitive version of the story on film.
Yes. There were several done in the 1900s.
There's been tons of them since film began.
Yes.
All around the world.
It's a fascinating story.
It is.
It's a really fascinating story. The one we're going to focus on is from 1945, directed by Albert Lewin, and starring quite a number of people that you're going to be able to, point to and say, "Hey, I know who that is."
We'll talk about the cast at the end.
Mm-hmm. The story of Dorian Gray is thus. As we're told by a narrator, Dorian is a young man who lives in London in the 19th century, towards the end of the 19th century. He's not a bad person, but he's actually just he's naive. He listens to people that he shouldn't listen to, and he's really, like I said, he's not a bad person, but he's I don't think it would be unkind to say that he's malleable. Would you actually go that far? Would you?
Yes,
say?
I actually would.
Okay.
He is very open to suggestions from Lord Henry.
Yes. Lord Henry is his friend, Lord Henry Wotton, who is the picture definition of the phrase scoundrel. Scoundrel, cad, mountebank, however else you want to put it using those fancy old-time words.
But he's not a bad person, really, at heart.
Well, no. He
has, as the narrator put it, he has mastered the art of doing nothing for a living.
Yes.
Because he's rich and doesn't have to.
Yeah. He's definitely the type of person that can slice people in half with a well-timed sentence, too. Dorian is posing for a portrait, done by a man named Basil Hallward. And the portrait is really very beautiful. It's a very beautiful picture. And as Dorian and Lord Henry are admiring it, and also Basil's niece, a little, at the time when we first see her, a little girl named Gladys.
Who is not in the book, by the way.
Who is not in the book.
Made up for the script.
Right. Dorian is quite taken by the picture of himself, which, is understandable because it's really a beautiful work of art. And he makes a remark because Lord Wotton keeps bringing up the fact that, you're only young once, and once that youth passes away, it's gone and you can never get it back, and you should live while you can, live only for pleasure, etc., so on and so forth. Dorian, while looking at his picture, makes a remark about the fact that he would love it if the picture would age and carry all of life's burdens while he still stayed young and perfect. That he would be willing to give away anything for that to happen, including his soul. While he is making these remarks, Lord Wotton also brings up the fact that he should be careful about making the remarks in the presence of one of the other pieces of art in Basil's studio, which is an ancient statue of a cat, which Lord Wotton claims is a statue of one of the multiple of gods of ancient Egypt and can supposedly grant wishes. If it's a cat, it's probably a representation of the cat goddess Bass or Basset Bastet, I believe it's Bastet or Bastet, I'm sure, from Egyptian mythology, and I don't know about the wish-giving part, but anyway. Dorian winds up going to a tavern and meets a young woman who sings there named Sybil Vane, and she is a beautiful singer and a genuinely kind, nice person. And Dorian winds up falling in love with her. Now, you do have to understand that at the time when this film is taking place, someone who is an actress and a singer is not thought of in the same high regard as someone nowadays would be thought of. You know, if you came home and said, "Mom, I'm dating an actress and singer," you know, your parents might be a little bit like, "Oh, great, well, that's nice," like, you know. But back then it was like, "You're dating a what?" Actresses and singers were not considered, they were kind of one step up from hookers back in the day.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that far.
Well, it's true. It took a very long time for women to actually be accepted on the stage in Britain. For the longest time, they didn't allow women to be actors. They had young men playing female parts.
Right.
So anyway, he winds up falling in love with her, and she winds up falling in love with him. The problem is that she has a brother named James who is not particularly crazy about this whole thing, and he's less crazy about it when it turns out that they wind up getting engaged. Now, Dorian is all excited that they're engaged, but Lord Henry throws a fly in the ointment by giving Dorian the idea of testing how much Sybil loves him, by making it seem like, you know, he wants her to stay overnight. Now, you have to understand, again, different time.
That wasn't done.
That wasn't done. You didn't do that. And when she, in his opinion, fails the test, he breaks it off with her really terribly. And when he decides to make amends for it, it's too late. Sybil has killed herself. And that's when Dorian notices a change in the painting. It's not a great, huge change, but there's something about the face that looks off. There's just this kind of cruelty around the eyes and the mouth that wasn't there before. And it continues on from there, and Dorian's piling sin after sin onto this painting, and he is not changing. He stays young and beautiful, and the painting gets progressively uglier and more hideous, culminating in an ending that you kind of see coming, but it's still unsettling, and ultimately really very tragic for everybody involved, because it leaves behind just a swath of ruined lives.
Yep.
Why don't you give us a cast list?
Narrated by Sir Cedric Hardwicke, uncredited. The cast includes Hurd Hatfield as Dorian Gray. What a household name he turned out to be. George Sanders as Lord Henry. Lowell Gilmore as Basil or Basil. Donna Reed as Gladys Donut, according to Wikipedia. Donut was her last name?
I don't think so.
Angela.
They never said her last name, to be honest.
Angela Lansbury as Sybil Vane. Peter Lawford as David, Gladys's fiance. Richard Fraser as James, Sybil's brother. Douglas Walton as Alan Campbell, an associate. Morton Lowry, Miles Mander, Lydia Bilbrook, and a whole bunch of other people also in the supporting cast.
David's not Gladys's fiance. He wants to be her fiance. They're
Oh, right, all right. They're getting there.
He wants them to get there. She's got eyes only for Dorian.
I thought they introduced him initially as her fiance, so it's okay. I might be wrong.
Anyway, the painting that is used for Dorian in this film is really, really amazing. I think it's beautiful. It starts life as a beautiful painting. It's also really interesting that this is a black and white film, but there's several shots of Dorian's painting at the beginning of the film when we see it, and at the end of the film, or towards the end of the film, where it's in color. And I think that was really interesting and a really fascinating choice on the part of the people making the film. It did win it was nominated for Academy Awards. It did win. It won Best Cinematography. It was up. Angela Lansbury was nominated for Best Actress in a Supporting Role.
Supporting Actress. Right.
And Best Art Direction. She did win a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress, and the film won a Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation, which I think is really cool.
The painting of the changed Dorian Gray, the hideous painting, is actually still displayed at the Chicago Museum of Art. Is that what?
The Art Institute of Chicago.
Chicago. It's been a permanent part of their collection for quite a few years. And it is horrific.
It is.
It is truly horrific.
Oh, it is. It's absolutely ghastly.
Yeah. I really was surprised by some of the characters in this. For one thing, Herb Hatfield, I joke, he actually was a very steady working character actor over the years, but the movie did not turn him into an overnight star like they had hoped it would do.
No.
He did remain lifelong best buds with his pal Angela Lansbury,
yes.
and he was a lifelong bachelor. He never married.
Nope.
He passed away at 82 in the mid-90s.
Yes. He actually did appear on several episodes of Angela's long-running show Murder, She Wrote. And it was actually her that convinced him to buy a home in Ireland, which is where he spent his remaining years, which I think is really neat.
It's an interesting role for Donna Reed as well. If all you're used to Donna Reed is the TV show or her brief stint in the late 80s, early 90s as Ellie Mae on, Miss Ellie.
Miss Ellie.
On Ellie Mae, that's a different show entirely. As Miss Ellie on Dallas, she replaced Barbara Bel Geddes for one season. It's quite a different role for her.
Actually, I kind of agree with you that it's a different role, but I wouldn't say it's a better role because...
No, I mean, she's best known for playing happy, perky housekeepers, wearing their pearls as they vacuum. And she rarely played anything like that when she was in the films. She would often play dowdy characters, or if they were glamorous...
The good girl. She played the good girl a lot.
She did play bad girl in several movies, though.
Yeah, but if you look at her character in this compared to Miss Ellie... Gladys is kind of a simp.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to Miss Ellie, who was always a strong character, but hid it behind, the whole iron hand in a velvet glove kind of a thing. She'd need to be a firm character in that family, otherwise her sons and husband would run roughshod over her.
Yep.
You brought up that you don't feel this is you're not really feeling the whole horror aspect of this. Can you really go into that?
And when people think of horror movies, they think of Dracula, they think of Frankenstein, or they think of the modern horror movies like Friday the 13th. This is a psychological horror film more than anything, but it's even not on par with Psycho as a psychological horror film.
Okay.
Not really.
Well,
I mean, because the only real horror of the film is the actual painting, and you only see it twice, briefly. Once in color, once in black and white, and then it fades back to what it's supposed to be at the end of the film. Of course, everybody who knows the story knows that. It's like, it is not horror as we generally think of horror in this day and age.
No, it isn't. Well... I can understand where you're coming from. I do have to kind of disagree, simply because you and I both are of the opinion that horror doesn't need to be bucket, 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 blood, blood.
Most certainly it can be psychological.
It's not shoving entrails and guts in the screen every 5 seconds.
But even some movies like that, like this, would still not be considered horror films alongside even slightly less horrific or slightly more horrific movies like Britain's Hammer Films was turning out in the 1960s. They weren't all Dracula. There was a lot of possession stories, a lot of possessed house stories.
Right.
Those would have been considered horror. This doesn't really come to that definition of horror, which is what I'm thinking from.
I actually would go a little further than you. You said it's more psychological horror. I would actually take it a different direction.
This is as much horror as the Screaming Skull was horror.
Well, no,
that's the same kind of thing that I'm thinking of.
Well, I'm thinking I would actually put this in a completely different category and call it philosophical horror. It's the whole idea of...
Okay.
No, seriously.
I know.
When you think about the whole idea that this man has done something incredible incredibly stupid. Not meaning to.
He was young. He was 22 at the time.
Not meaning to. But if nothing else, kids, this movie takes away, you should take away one thing from this film, if nothing else. Never, ever, ever say something like, oh,
I'd give my soul for something.
Yeah, I would give anything for something. I'd sell my soul to blah, blah, blah. Don't say that, because there is always somebody listening.
There's another movie coming out later this month or early next month along those same lines called American Satan. It just showed at the Boston Film Festival.
And there is always somebody out there willing to cut a deal. And trust me, you don't want to be there when it's time for the bill to come due. Everybody pays in the end.
Let's talk briefly about the performances. George Sanders, perhaps best known for his take on Mr. Freeze, was it not?
Yes.
In the Batman television series.
Well, he did a whole bunch of stuff.
But I'm saying to our generation and to the current generation, people aren't going to know him for most, unless they're classic film buffs, because he's not in a lot of stuff that, as later years did until he did Batman.
Yeah. And Disney fans would know him as the voice of Shere Khan from The Jungle Book.
He was that role, Basil Rathbone campaigned to get that role, according to
Lord Henry?
Yeah, according to the trivia on IMDb. But they turned him down because he was busy doing Sherlock Holmes and didn't want to interrupt those because they were too profitable. And yet, in George Sanders' performance, I can totally see a slight bit of Basil Rathbone imitation. So it's definitely conceivable. The one thing that really surprised both of us is how real novice of an actor Peter Lawford is in this film.
Oh, I know.
He was, he grew up, he was one of the Rat Pack. He grew up into, to be one of the top character actors along that lines, along with Dean Martin and Joey Bishop and Don Rickles and Frank Sinatra and all that group, Sammy Davis Jr. Also was a part of the Kennedy connection as married to one of the sisters, was he not?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, he was involved with the Kennedy family somewhere in that tangled
mess of relationships.
in that yarn ball of trying to figure out who's related to whom by what.
As he got older, he was a magnificent actor, and here he's just terrible. I mean, let's be honest. We were both sitting there. God, he couldn't act worth a crap when he started, could he? Wow.
It's early in his career, but it's not terribly early. But we were both kind of. He got better as the movie went along. But at the beginning, I was just kind of like, wow.
He was kind of this brash teenager type when he first came in, So,
I mean, the whole scene toward the end when he talks about having the key made and breaking into the house and all that stuff like that.
Fine.
That was actually good. Yeah. I like that. The story of Dorian Gray has been done quite a number of times.
Oh, yeah.
With quite a varied amount of people playing him and telling his story.
The most recent version that's probably been seen on TV, at least, was the version in 2009 with Ben Barnes as Dorian Gray, Colin Firth as Sir Henry, and Ben Chaplin as Basil Hallward. I remember when that was being made. I've not seen it. And the character of Dorian Gray was actually the lead character in the Showtime series Penny Dreadful, played by Reeve Carney, best known for the Spider-Man Broadway musical.
Dorian as a character appeared in the 2003 film League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
The less said about that, the better.
Played by Stuart Townsend.
Again, the less said about that, the better.
That movie had such potential. But, it is what it is. The thing that I find interesting is, as we've said, a number of people have played Dorian Gray, including, there's a version out there, I would love to find this. There was a show called Armchair Theater, which is a TV show, and Jeremy Brett played Dorian Gray, and I'm like, damn.
That would have probably been a British show.
Yeah. I was like, damn, I'd like to have seen that. That would have been interesting.
That was in the 1960s. That was, in fact, the most recent version after the one that we were talking about. I'm just looking through this list. 1961 made for television in America, apparently, probably the same script as the Jeremy Brett one. Just looking at the cast, had John Fraser as Dorian Gray, George C. Scott as Lord Henry, and Susan Oliver as Sybil. Susan Oliver, who was Vina, was that her name? In the Cage?
In the Cage.
Star Trek original pilot?
Yeah. There was a BBC version done in 1976 with Peter Firth as Dorian. Jeremy Brett played Basil the Painter in that one. And Sir John Gielgud as Lord Wotton, which I'm like, that's amazing casting.
Judy Bowker as Sybil in that one too.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to find that. That's probably something to watch.
A gender switch version, The Sins of Dorian Gray, featured Belinda Bauer as the female Dorian Gray. She was an actress and photographic model. While an audition tape she made ages for her. What?
Well, if you're going to do a more modern version, a portrait's a bit old hat, really. It's not going to really fly. There was a version done called Pact with the Devil in 2004, in case you really needed it hammered at home what was going on. It was also known as Dorian. That came out in 2004. Ethan Erickson was the lead with Malcolm McDowell as Henry Wotton, which is also frickin' awesome casting because it's Malcolm frickin' McDowell. Come on.
Yeah, there's a second movie called Dorian in 2004 as well as The Picture of Dorian Gray with Josh Duhamel as Dorian Gray. Oh, that's terrible casting. I didn't know either one of the other two. David Gallagher played Dorian Gray in a 2006 production. David Gallagher, really? I mean, that seems kind of crazy. Wouldn't he have been too young to play the part in 2006? Possibly not. I don't know. He was 20. He probably would have been 20 by then. After all those years he spent on Seventh Heaven as the youngest son.
Well, the thing is, he's a lot older than he looks. I mean, he's 32 and does not look it.
Yeah, but he doesn't look it. He still was a great young actor.
Dorian's story has obviously been broadcast on just audio as well because it's such an interesting story.
Although, interestingly enough, never adapted by the Mercury Theatre, which you would have thought this would have been a natural for Orson Welles and company.
You would have thought he would have jumped at the chance to play Lord Wotton because that's just the kind of part that Orson would have sunk his teeth into.
And he would have given Joseph Cotton the role of Dorian Gray, probably.
He would have sunk his teeth like a pit bull into that part and never, ever let go. There have been several plays about the Picture of Dorian Gray, which I would think would be kind of difficult to stage. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But there have even been musicals done as well, which I think that's really interesting. I mean, I would have never thought you could do a musical or an opera. There's been an operatic version done as well. But if you told me a while ago they were going to do a musical version of the Phantom of the Opera, I would have told you were high.
I think one of the most interesting things, there's been a number of different literature written about him, too. A book of poems called The Detrius of Dorian Gray, which also has a poem called The Detrius of Dorian Gray, was published by Kevin Max, who, those of you who don't know Kevin Max, he was 1/3 of the biggest selling Christian group of all time, DC Talk. And also the lead singer of Audio Adrenaline for a couple of years, and he's a well-known and accomplished writer and poet. I didn't know he did something like that, and I've kept up with it. That's really interesting.
Neil Gaiman, one of the most amazing fiction writers of our time, we're not worthy, did a short story called The Wedding Present, in an anthology, I'm talking too fast, an anthology from 1998 called Smoke and Mirrors, that is referencing the Dorian Gray story. And we reference the Dorian Gray story all the time. You know, when we talk about someone, that looks, I hate to use the term well-preserved. I mean, that sounds terrible.
We are always saying, they must have a picture in their attic somewhere.
There's a couple
Cliff
of people,
Richard?
Yeah, there's two people I can think of. I can think of two people we bring that up about all the time. One of them being British rock star Cliff Richard.
The other being American Bandstand host Dick Clark.
And perpetual teenager up until the point when he was ill because he suffered from a stroke.
Clark's appearance never changed from the time.
No.
Maybe from when it didn't change from the time he adopted the pompadour, which was the early 70s, until he got ill in 2006, I think it was, or 2005, when he had his stroke. But he credited that always, he never looked like he didn't age a day. For 35 years, he didn't age a day. And the man credited it to a regular regimen of moisturizers and taking care of his skin. I don't know what Cliff Richard has done. Cliff has actually started to look slightly aged now.
Slightly.
Just. And the man is in his 70s, and he still looks like he's like 40.
I think he's got Vulcan blood in him. We know Vulcans age slowly, so maybe that's what it is.
When you see Cliff Richard on TV, like 10 years ago, he looked like he was about 25, 30, and he's 65 years old up there singing this stuff. And now it's like, wow. I should say Sir Cliff. He is Sir Cliff Richard. He is
Sir Cliff Richard. Now, actually, honey, he's older than that.
Is he?
He's 76.
Now, I said 10 years ago.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. So he's now 76.
And looking like he's about 40.
And that's ridiculous. And that just makes me nauseous. It makes me nauseous. I'm sorry.
George Takei is 70-something and doesn't look a day over 40 either. No, when you really consider it, the man is amazing.
It's aggravating.
Yeah, it is.
It's aggravating. Of course, I say that, but I have people tell me that I look pretty good for my age, which I'm not admitting what it is. And people say, "What's your secret?" And I'm like, immaturity.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm like, I just stay as immature as
You don't look
possible.
anywhere close to your real age.
Oh.
No, I'm not just saying that. You
don't
look. You look at least 10, if not 15 years younger than you really are.
Oh, stop!
If it wasn't for the fact that you've kept the salt and pepper hair, which looks really good on you, it's like that's the only thing. If you actually got a decent, went into the parlor, got a really nice job back to the natural color it was before the salt and pepper set in, which I think is so awesome, you could easily pass 15 years, at least, younger than you are.
Well, I got my first gray hair when I got my first gray hair when I was 12. So I figured, well, that's it. I'm done. And it just, I've done...
I know it drives your mother nuts, so I just think it looks fantastic.
Well, I've done horrible things to my hair, dye-wise. I'm lucky my hair still speaks to me.
Not to mention the spiral perm.
That was not my idea, damn it. That was not my idea.
I have footage of Kim's spiral perm. Write to me, Subject Cinema at PNRNetworks.com.
You're a jerk. So I hope you guys enjoyed this segment on Dorian and his story. We think it's a really fascinating story. If you've never checked out the picture of Dorian Gray from the 1940s, you should definitely do so. It is available right now on cable. I mean,
we ordered it through Comcast, and you can rent it on Amazon also.
Yep.
Netflix does not have any of the versions of it, but both the 1945 version and the Ben Barnes version are available on Amazon.
Yeah, and you can probably go check it out at your local library. Pick up a book once in a while,
or check out the DVD. What are we doing next week?
Next week we are going to be talking about the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
The Men at Work song?
No.
Oh no, that's Dr. Heckle and Mr. Jive, isn't it?
You are such a Philistine.
Thank you.
Real movies for real people. Subject Cinema.
PNR Network shows depend on our listeners. It's you that makes us who we are. Help us bring you all the best we can. Become a Patreon patron. Donations start at just $2 a month, and the more patrons we can get, the more we'll be able to offer. You can get great perks, plus exclusive blogs and podcasts available only for being a patron as well. It's absolutely fantastic. So please, become a Patreon patron today. We need you. Patreon.com/PNR Networks.
If you're looking for great films, well, that's okay. You'll like us anyway. Subject Cinema.
I say that if you were injected with this, you'd revert to a primitive anthropoid, physically as well as mentally.
Only one scientist dared investigate the incredible phenomena. Our pet dog
I don't know if you could actually call this a haunted classic unless you're haunted by fishy means.
I guess.
1958's Monster on the Campus.
Mm-hmm.
Give us the rundown on this.
Monster on the Campus deals with Dr. Donald Blake.
It's Thor!
It's not Thor.
It's Thor!
It is not Thor. It is a different...
It's not Thor?
It's not Thor! It's a different Dr. Donald Blake. Settle down.
Okay.
This Dr. Donald Blake happens to be a science professor at a university. And he is very excited and up about a new discovery that has been brought to the campus. The discovery recently of a species of fish, and this is actually true, a fish that was long thought extinct was found to actually be alive. The coelacanth, to be specific, and that's actually true. They did find out that this fish actually still existed. A coelacanth carcass has been brought to the campus and brought there by one of the students driving the college truck, who brings the coelacanth in a box, obviously dead, it's dead, but they didn't ice it very well because there's liquid dripping out of the back of the truck, liquid which is licked up by Jimmy's dog, and the coelacanth blood apparently has some sort of strange properties to it that we don't know what's caused it. But the dog winds up having a violent reaction in the fact that this normally gentle German Shepherd, which is a very beautiful dog, winds up all of a sudden attacking people and acting all feral and crazy, and his teeth are suddenly, his canines are suddenly much, much longer than normal. And he's behaving almost more like a wolf. Dr. Blake winds up being exposed to the coelacanth blood by, he cuts his hand while transporting the coelacanth, and his hand gets in the water where the coelacanth was resting, which is now full of blood and other stuff that we don't want to think about. And he winds up feeling ill. And after this happens, there turns out to be all of this craziness happening on campus. A woman winds up getting killed and is the first of many deaths being perpetrated by, we don't know, or well, we know, but we the audience know, or are pretty damn sure.
We can figure it out very easily.
Yeah, but the cops are all scratching their heads. But it's very clear there is definitely something amiss at Dunsford University, and it's up to the cops and Jimmy and his girlfriend to find out what the hell is going on.
With Arthur Franz as Dr. Donald Blake. Sure?
It's not Thor!
Joanna Moore as Madeline Howard, Judson Pratt as Lieutenant Mike Stevens, Nancy Walters as Sylvia Lockwood, Troy Donahue in one of his early roles as Jimmy Flanders, Phil Harvey as Sergeant Powell, Helen Westcott as Nurse Molly Reardon, Whit Bissell as Dr. Oliver Cole, Alexander Lockwood as Dr. Gilbert Howard, and Ross Elliott as Sergeant Eddie Daniels, with uncredited appearances by Ann Anderson, Louis Cavalier, Richard H. Cutting, Hank Patterson, Ronnie Rondell Jr., and Eddie Parker in the makeup garb.
Yep.
Oh my Lord, this film was terrible.
It is not a good movie.
It's terrible.
It's
terrible. It's truly terrible.
It's not a good film. Now, of course, one of the things that we do have to mention, that the reason all of this insanity goes on, as we find out as the film goes on, because I know some of you are going out there going, but how did just this guy getting scratched by this stuff, and why is all this crazy stuff happening because of a dead fish? Well, I'll tell you. The reason is because as it turns out, in the film, we find out that to preserve the fish at some point, it was exposed to radiation. Dun, dun, dun.
Gamma rays, to
be
specific.
Gamma rays. And we all know what happens with gamma rays. So we go from Dr. Drake to Dr. Banner? What happened?
Dr. Banner's not in this film.
No, I know. And neither is Thor, so knock it off. You're right. This is not a good film.
I wonder where he was hiding Mjolnir. Would have made for a more interesting film.
And the sad thing is, the people that have only watched the Avengers, watched the Marvel movie universe, are all going, "What are they talking about?" It's called comics, kids. Do your research.
If they saw the first movie, they get it.
Anyway,
they did bring up the Donald Blake name in the first movie.
Yeah, this sucks. It's really not good. I mean,
it sucks like a vacuum cleaner.
There is a line at the beginning of this film that just, I mean, from the first 5 minutes of this movie, I was like, well, we're 5 minutes in and I already hate it. The doctor is having his girlfriend, he's using her as the mold for his masks. He's got these masks in his
He's
classroom.
making a series of masks that note evolutionary process.
Yeah. And we realize that just, we're talking about evolution in school. Oh man, I know some people just flipped.
Well, in college, that was normal.
Yeah, anyway. So she's lying there and she's got the plaster on her face, and he makes some remark about this is how every woman should be, quiet and unmoving or something like that. And I'm sitting there going, I'd punch you right in the balls. Seriously, I was like 5 minutes in and this movie's already managed to piss me off. That has to be some kind of a record.
This was the final movie in the original Universal Monsters movies series that came out, a lot of them in the 50s. There would be one more brief reappearance in 1966, but this was the last of all the groups that were released in the 50s.
Yeah.
And there's
it's really kind of sad.
Yeah,
it's like, wow.
It's terrible. It's also known by the names Monster in the Night and Stranger on the Campus, and is available through most streaming outlets if you want to risk it. It's a fun little movie to make fun of.
Yeah.
You can point at it. You can misty it. The effects are pretty good for the time.
The giant dragonfly is interesting.
Yeah, they did a good job with that. I thought that was really well done.
It's not great. I mean, I've seen better, but
and there's one of the most gruesome murder discoveries in the history of film in this movie.
There is?
Yeah. The woman in the tree.
Oh, yeah, it's not nice.
She's right behind them, and her eyes are wide open, and she's hanging by a limb from her hair.
From her hair. It's not gruesome as in there's guts and blood hanging out.
Wow, if you're not expecting that, that's like the scene where Natalie Portman's character is getting it on with herself in Black Swan, and suddenly you see her mother in the room asleep.
It's unsettling.
It's like, holy crap, what?
It's like, what just happened? Oh my god. It is. For a movie that's really not very graphic or gory, it is a very unsettling shot.
Yeah.
But it's not one of the better monster movies you're ever going to see.
Strangely enough, it got very good reviews at the time it came out.
Really?
Most of them came out as rated it very good.
Huh.
With only Variety calling it good and Parents Magazine giving it a fair rating. But of course, we all know that Parents Magazine wasn't terribly reliable because all the kids that read Parents Magazine while their parents had it and saw it was not good for under 12 immediately wanted to see the film.
Yeah.
So, I know
the
from experience.
The second something says, oh, kids shouldn't see this, the kids go, I want to see it.
Uh-huh.
That doesn't change.
No.
That hasn't changed since the invention of kids. That's the way it's always been.
1958's Monster on the Campus. Check it out during your horror month of entertainment.
Yes, if your pain tolerance is high enough.
Welcome to the soundtrack of your life. You're listening to Subject Cinema with TC Kirkham and Kim Brown.
Want to know what new films are coming out this weekend? Hi, I'm TC Kirkham of Subject Cinema, inviting you to check out 3 Minute Weekend, our weekly roundup of all the new films hitting U.S. theaters each weekend. We've got the 411 on all the new blockbusters, indies, and video-on-demand choices for you each week. 3 Minute Weekend, every Friday morning, from Subject Cinema and eCinemaOne.com, a PNRNetworks podcast powered by Libsyn. Subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast service.
We've got the films you're looking for. Subject Cinema with TC and Kim.
Samuel Goldwyn presents The Little Foxes, Lillian Hellman's famous play, brought to the screen by that hit-making combination, producer Samuel Goldwyn and director William Wyler. The Little Foxes, with Bette Davis.
Alexandra is not getting married tomorrow, but she is going to...
Kim's been spending some of her spare time over the last few weeks glued to Turner Network, Turner Classic Movies. They've been showing a bunch of interesting stuff she's always wanted to see. And this one fits in with those, one of the classic roles from Bette Davis.
Yes.
The Little Foxes. Tell us about it.
Okay. The Little Foxes from 1941 is based on a play of the same name. The play was written by Lillian Hellman, and the screenplay was written by Lillian Hellman as well, and the film was directed by William Wyler. The story of the Little Foxes tells of a family in the South, and the fact that obviously everybody knows that after the Civil War, the South went through a lot of change and upheaval, and a lot of things, didn't work out really well for people. And this film shows that the wars that go on in families can be just as bloody and brutal as anything that happens on the battlefield. Regina Hubbard Giddens is trying to carve her way through life in a society that made it really impossible for a woman to be the person she wanted to be. If you were a woman in the South, you basically had to rely on, even if you were a wealthy woman in the South, you basically had to rely on your male relatives for, your support, your sustenance, basically your very life.
Boo.
Yeah, boo. Boo hiss, definitely. Because in the South at the time, and other places as well, I'm not going to completely slag on the South, so don't everybody yell at me. The only children that were considered legal heirs were the sons. So a father couldn't leave property or money or stuff like that, large amounts of it, to their daughters. Yeah. Her brothers Benjamin and Oscar are wealthy and independently wealthy and rub her face in it often. And she has to rely on the support of her husband, Horace, who is not living at home right now. He's been living away because he is very ill. He has a very bad heart condition, and he was sent away for his health. Now, I know some people might be like, wow, that sucks, poor Regina. It's a very bad situation. But Regina is not the type of person that you're going to feel sorry for, because Regina is a stone-cold bitch.
Gee, and Betty Davis played her. What a shock!
Stunner, isn't it? Actually, I'd go further than a stone-cold bitch, and I'd use another word, but this is a family show, and I can't.
Rhymes with punt.
Yeah. And her brothers are no better. Benjamin is a very sly, smug bastard who is very difficult to like. And Oscar is an absolute a-hole. He married a woman named Bertie to acquire her family's land and cotton fields and plantation and stuff like that, and completely broke her spirit. And Bertie is now a completely, alcoholic, living in her own world kind of mess because of the psychological and physical abuse of Oscar. At one point, we see her get hit really damn hard by him, and I was like, okay, good thing this is a TV show, because I'd reach through the TV and strangle you. Benjamin and Oscar want to join up with another gentleman to see about putting together a cotton mill. And they approach Regina about getting money from her husband, Horace, to invest in this cotton mill. And it's quite a lot of money. I mean, $75,000 is a lot of money.
At that time, that was a fortune.
Yeah, I mean, $75,000 is a lot of money now. Never mind back then, when that's like, money that most people couldn't even picturing that kind of money. Oscar also wants to set up another arrangement, which is even more distasteful, in the fact that he wants his son Leo, who is a wretched, awful human being, to marry Regina's daughter Alexandra. Yes, they are cousins. They are first cousins. Let that sink in for a minute. As a means of getting a hold of Horace's money. And Alexandra is pretty much disgusted by this idea, not only because of the hello, first cousin aspect of it, but also the fact that Leo is just
a drip.
He is a drip. He is basically a carbon copy of his father, and you could definitely see this little scumbag, following in the whole, if you want to keep a woman in line, slap her around mentality that her father has, that his father has. And also the fact that Alexandra is also in love with somebody else. The somebody else happens to be a young man named David who works for a local newspaper, probably doesn't have 2 cents to rub together, and has absolutely no patience for any of the bullcrap artifice and downright skullduggery that goes on behind the fake smiles of Regina and the rest of her upper crusty family. And this whole situation gets even more uncomfortable when Horace comes back home because Regina sends Alexandra to go get him on the pretense of, I miss my husband, I want him back. As it turns out, when Horace comes back, Regina's like, yeah, I never loved you and I want money. That ends with Horace winding up having a heart attack, which, if this was the modern day, Regina would probably be hauled off in handcuffs for, I wouldn't say maybe possibly attempted negligent homicide, but...
Well, you can't have attempted negligent homicide. It would have been negligent homicide. She refused to give him his medicine when he needed it.
Yeah, but he's not dead yet. At the beginning of it, at the beginning of the whole mess, he's not dead yet.
Yeah.
But she does stand there and does absolutely nothing as Horace is pitifully crawling up the stairs trying to get to his heart medicine to, save his life. The cast is...
And he's heartbroken by what she's telling him, too.
Well, you'd be pretty heartbroken, too, if your wife says, she tells him, I hope you die, I'm waiting for you to die, etc., and so forth like that, in that cold Betty Davis sneering voice. The cast includes Betty Davis as Regina, Herbert Marshall as Horace, Teresa Wright as Alexandra, Richard Carlson as David Hewitt, Dan Durea as Leo, Patricia Collins as Bertie, Charles Dingle as Ben Hubbard, Carl Benton Reed as Oscar Hubbard, and also the cast includes Jessica Grayson, John Marriott, Russell Hicks, Lucian Littlefield, Virginia Brissac, and other folks as well.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of this film?
It was really interesting. I've heard about this film a lot during my life, and I was always kind of like, gee, I wonder what this film was about. I also never understood what the title meant. I was always kind of like, what is, are there foxes in this movie? What is this about? I actually found out that it's actually a line from the Bible. It's from, it's part of the Song of Solomon. The whole thing is, take us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes. That's the actual whole line. It's a really good film. Betty Davis, you cannot take your eyes off her during this film.
Well, duh. It's Betty Davis, for Pete's sake.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I mean, Betty Davis is one of my all-time favorite actresses, I will admit. And she is so controlling and so rigid in this film.
And so good at playing those kind of roles.
And so good at playing a stone-cold bitch. But even in that respect, you kind of understand why Regina is like this because of the times that she lives in. Mm-hmm. She's trying to exist as best she can in a society that makes it damn near next to impossible for a woman to be who she is.
Yeah, it didn't. And back then, at the turn of the century, it just wasn't heard of.
No. The one person that I really want to bring up is Patricia Collins, who played Bertie. There's a scene where Bertie usually comes off in the film as very kind of flighty and silly and drunk. There's a scene where she is drunk and talking about...
You notice how your voice drops every time you say that?
Sorry.
Well, she is drunk.
Well, she's not like falling down, crashing into the furniture drunk, but she's drunk enough that she can actually give voice to her feelings. Mm-hmm. There's a reason that the saying in vino veritas exists, in wine there is truth. Yeah. Where she's talking about why Oscar married her, and she talks about the fact that she actually doesn't love her own son. She doesn't even like her son. She doesn't like him as a person. Mm-hmm. And there's so much heartbreak in her voice when she realizes that she's just given voice to this, and that, you know, it's going against everything that you're supposed to be. You know, as a mother, you're supposed to love your children unconditionally, but sometimes you can't because your children are just crappy people. And, you know, I realize some people might have just went, but it's true.
It is
you
true.
know. I think it's a great film. It's definitely something that you should check out on Turner Classic Movies if you get a chance. The ending is really something special. I think the ending is really powerful, even though it's not this big, explosive ending that some people might be waiting for. I won't tell you what it is, but it's really works out well with the film, and it goes well with the characters. If I was going to grade it, I would definitely give The Little Foxes an A-, and I would definitely say check it out on Turner Classic Movies or anywhere else you get to see it.
No film is too good or too bad for us. This is Subject Cinema.
All right, Kristen, I am so excited that you've decided to do a podcast with me, but what are we going to do a podcast about? There's so many other movie podcasts. We got to do something original.
Well, you know, I'm a big fan of Disney movies. What about something like that?
That's just kid stuff. What do we want to do that for?
Did you know that The Avengers is a Disney movie? Or that Pulp Fiction is a Disney movie?
Pulp Fiction is not a Disney movie.
It's technically owned by Miramax, which is part of Disney.
We are still going to talk about the Disney animated movies, though, right?
I thought you said that was kid stuff.
Well, you know, I've got 2 kids. I got to be a good dad and stuff.
So be sure to subscribe to the Walt Sent Me podcast, where we discuss the various subsidiaries of the Walt Disney Studios, including the animated movies.
It's available on iTunes, Podomatic, and wherever you find great podcasts. And I swear, it's not kid stuff.
All movies, all the time. Subject Cinema.
You know, I've watched about 19,000 scary movies in my lifetime, and I was thinking today that I could make the greatest horror film in history, because I know all the rules.
We are giving our hostess for the mostest spotlights this month as we spotlight some of the top horror hosts over the decades. And today, we're going to go back to the 1980s again, and a man who helped make horror hosting hip again at the time, the inimitable Joe Bob Briggs.
Yes. Joe Bob Briggs, which is the stage name of a gentleman named John Irving Bloom, is a Texas actor, writer, and all-around weird person who is a horror movie host that's done a lot of stuff that I think that he's hysterically funny.
I never got the chance to see him because we never had the networks where he was on. And so I knew him from his books and from his appearances on The Tonight Show and various talk show stuff. I never really got to see the shows, though.
His character, Joe Bob Briggs, debuted in a one-man show called An Evening with Joe Bob Briggs, which actually debuted in 1985 in Cleveland, of all places. It started off as storytelling and music and jokes and stuff like that. And it went from there. He was asked to be a guest host on a show that was on the movie channel called Drive-In Theater, which showed, as you can figure out, B movies. And he was really well-liked on there, so well-liked, in fact, they asked him to, they gave him a long-term contract. And Joe Bob's Drive-In Theater became one of the highest-rated shows on the movie channel and ran for nearly 10 years and was actually nominated a couple of times for the Cable Ace Award, which is pretty neat. He appeared on a whole mess of talk shows, including The Tonight Show, Larry King, and he, unfortunately, when TMC changed their format, in 1996, Joe Bob's Drive-In Theater didn't make the cut, And he wound up going, but he didn't stay off the air for very long, and wound up on TNT about 4 months later, where he hosted a show called Monster Vision, which was another awesome show that I completely loved. That ran for 4 years. The problem was when TNT changed their format as well, Joe Bob had to move on again.
Take a powder again.
Mm-hmm.
Horror hosts are so not treated well by
No, they are
networks.
not treated with the respect they deserve. They're really not. He's appeared on The Daily Show under his proper name, his given name of John Bloom. He appeared in a documentary about Herschel Gordon Lewis, Godfather of Gore, made an appearance in that. And he's written several books, including Joe Bob Goes to the Drive-In, A Guide to Western Civilization, or My Story, Joe Bob Goes Back to the Drive-In, The Cosmic Wisdom of Joe Bob Briggs, Iron Joe Bob, and Profoundly Disturbing, Shocking Movies That Changed History, and Profoundly Erotic, Sexy Movies That Changed History. I need to get those. I've actually seen him as an actor, away from the Joe Bob character. He's appeared in several films and TV shows, including Great Balls of Fire, the Jerry Lee Lewis biopic, and the De Niro drama Casino. He's appeared in Face Off, several other films and TV shows. I think he's terrific. I think he's a really funny dude. And he does have a website out there. It's called joebobbriggs.com. And I hope you guys will go and check that out and look at what he's doing and maybe go check out some of his books. And if you do any of that stuff, please let them know where you heard about them over here on Subject Cinema.
And that is this week's hostess with the mostess.
The best movies. Subject Cinema.
Want to know what top titles from film and TV are hitting home video this week? Hi, I'm TC Kirkham of Subject Cinema, inviting you to check out Tuesday Digidex, our weekly roundup of all the new home video releases in the U.S. each week. Whether it's DVD, Blu-ray, or streaming you're looking for, we've got it covered. Tuesday Digidex, every Tuesday morning, from Subject Cinema at eCinemaOne.com, a PNRNetworks podcast powered by Libsyn. Subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast service.
Your every man's film school. This is Subject Cinema.
That music says it's time to visit Deep 13 again on classic episodes of Mystery Science Theater 3000, the 13 Report, going back to one of our favorite episodes of the show and one of our favorite monster movies of all time. At least one of mine. I don't know if it's one of your favorites.
No,
or
I
not.
like it. I remember this from being a kid.
1957's The Deadly Mantis, starring Paul Drake, William Hopper, and Alex Talton and Craig Stevens.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
The story of the Deadly Mantis begins with the story of the Deadly Mantis starts...
The first 8 minutes of Deadly Mantis are a lesson about radar!
Yes. All about Walter O'Reilly. No. Not that radar.
Wrong radar.
It's all about actual radar. Like talking about radar and what it does and how important it is.
The dew line and all that stuff.
And blah, 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 and blah.
That's one of my favorite parts of this film, though. I think it's I never knew all that stuff about the
I
defense.
never cared about it.
But it's a good thing to know.
Well, yeah, I know. But the weird thing is how this film actually is the definition of the butterfly effect, really. The whole idea that a butterfly's wing flapping causes, on one side of the world, causes a tsunami on the other side of the world.
Uh-huh.
At the beginning of this film, we have an explosion in the South Seas. A volcano goes boom.
Boom.
Which causes icebergs in the North Pole to move. I don't entirely know how, but whatevs.
Currents, dear. Currents. Currents of the water.
Oh, okay. All right, well, neat. Anyway, the thing is, not only did the icebergs move, but something inside them moves. As it turns out, a 200-foot-long praying mantis a refugee from when dinosaurs walked the earth, crawls its way out of the crack in the world, and proceeds to...
That's an entirely different film.
Sorry.
Anyway.
And proceeds to wreak havoc upon the North Pole, to which I'm calling bullcrap.
And they never actually did that movie either, and they should have.
No. To which I'm calling...
We need to write the new one. I'm
calling crap about that, because I still think it would be too cold and it would have keeled over. But anyway, so after nomming on some Eskimos and terrorizing terrorizing an Air Force base, the praying mantis realizes, hey, I can fly. And it takes to the skies and winds up flying over the United States, and people are told to keep an eye out for it and stuff like that. Eventually, the mantis makes its way to Washington, D.C., climbs the Washington Monument, and
you're skipping a whole lots of stuff in the middle about Dr. Paul Drake. I mean, who's he playing? Dr.
He's Dr. What the hell is his name?
Dr. Ned. We'll just call him Ned. Nedrick Jackson.
Yes.
Who is a scientist at the Museum of Natural History, a paleontologist.
And
he's the one that helps him figure out it's a mantis.
Yeah. And headed up to the North Pole with spunky magazine reporter Marge Blaine. And so like I mentioned, the mantis goes on a spree of flying around, and as I mentioned, climbed the Washington Monument, winds up eventually being shot down and crashes off-screen into the Lincoln Tunnel, because the traffic in New York isn't bad enough. And the intrepid Army folks go in there with flamethrowers and guns and poison gas, and eventually wind up killing the mantis. Hooray.
This was Craig Stevens as Colonel Joe Parkman, William Hopper as Dr. Nedrick Jackson, Alex Talton as Marge Blaine, Donald Randolph as General Mark Ford, Pat Conway as Sergeant Allen, Florence Ames as Professor Anton Gunther. You've seen him in practically everything. Paul Smith as the Corporal Parkman's clerk. Phil Harvey, girls,
yeah,
as Lou the Radar Man. Phil was later on the Doris Day Show. Floyd Simmons as the Army Sergeant, Paul Campbell as Lieutenant Fred Pizar, and Helen Jay as Mrs. Farley. I always thought this was one of my favorites of these kind of movies, because it's really, the effects are well done for the time, and it's got Paul Drake in it.
Yes, it does.
This is the only time I've ever seen William Hopper play a role other than Paul Drake, the infamous private detective employed by the legendary Perry Mason, of course. And I'm always wondering,
what?
Why he didn't do more. This was a great film. He has a great job on the lead here.
Yeah, he actually doesn't do a nice job. It's not bad. I mean, this is one of your more goofy giant monster movies. I mean, I still think that the whole concept is ridiculous, but it's
And
fun.
Marge falls for Joe, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Obviously, there's some stuff about this film. This is not your typical guy in a suit giant monster film. They did use models, except for the scene where the praying mantis is seen in a long shot climbing up the Washington Monument, where they did use an actual praying mantis climbing up a tiny model of the Washington Monument.
And they did the effects way better than any of the stuff that Bird-Eye Gordon did.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They were really well done.
Yeah, they're not bad. They're not bad.
Give us the rundown on what this was a Joel, right?
No, this was a Mike.
This was a Mike.
This was a Mike. This was
this was a Sci-Fi Channel.
Yes,
one.
it was.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd also like to bring up, before we get to that, I don't think mantises would roar, but anyway.
No, they wouldn't. That was just what it would do for a giant.
I mean,
They had to give it some kind of noise.
I do think it would have been really. I think
giant grasshoppers don't sound like crickets either, but that's what they did.
It probably would have been more accurate to have it make some kind of a squeak noise. But let's be honest, if a 200-foot long praying mantis sounding like a squeaky toy would have.
It may sounded like nothing, because I don't think they have vocal cords. Anyway,
I don't know. Anyway, so the prologue on the actual Misty portion of the show was the fact that it was business casual day on the Satellite of Love, rules made up by Tom and summarily ignored by Mike. In the first segment, they're still orbiting Earth at this point, and Earth ruled by apes. And it turned...
Well, yes, because they switched out and ended up going through time at where the apes are now in charge of the...
Well, this is still really early on in the sci-fi era.
Right.
So they had come... Mike and the bots had come back to the Satellite of Love as energy and had been reformed and found out they were still orbiting Earth, and that all this time had gone by and that apes were ruling the universe. Apes were ruling Earth under the guise of the lawgiver Pearl Forrester. Something goes wrong with a H-bomb. Oops. And the world gets blown up. As, things like that happen. It's an H-bomb. What are you going to do? Segment 2 involves Tom giving a eulogy for the late great planet Earth. As it turns out that it's a little bit early for the eulogy for Pearl, because Pearl managed to escape Earth's destruction and is now furiously pursuing the fleeing Satellite of Love in her van. Go with it. Just leave it alone.
It's only a show. You should really just relax.
Yeah. Mike, who is driving the Satellite of Love at this point, manages to fall asleep at the wheel. And they try to stay, Mike tries to stay conscious by listening to outer space radio, which it turns out only plays country and western music.
Not Perry Como, huh?
That would have had me drive right into a supernova. But anyway, I digress. It could be worse. It could be Justin Bieber.
Oh yeah.
Segment 4 has Tom trying to drive the Satellite of Love. That goes about as well as you think it's going to go, because he winds up hitting something. And it turns out the something that he hits is alive. It's not just an asteroid or a meteor or whatever. Or
asteroid.
Kenny. Or Sputnik or whatever else is out there, or the remnants of the Mir. He's actually hit an actual thing. And when I call it a thing, I realize somewhere Dr. McCoy is yelling at me going, why is anything that you don't know the name of called a thing? But anyway.
Anyway.
This large blue blob, which is slightly better than a thing, I guess. It's okay. It actually seems to be okay from being hit by the Satellite of Love, which is good until it eats Crow, which is less good. And Mike decides to try and get it to release Crow, which, it's pretty nasty, actually, because Crow winds up coming out of this creature's mouth, and apparently this creature's digestive system works wicked fast, because he's not looking so hot.
No.
The final segment involves Crow serving Mike and Tom a meal, which is meatloaf. 2 guesses what the meatloaf is made of, and if one of your guesses is the blob from the previous segments, give yourself a pat on the back. Mike also winds up getting a letter from Dr. Peanut, who was one of the other apes on Earth at the time previously, who was blasted back into the 22nd century. We're not entirely sure how. And Dr. Peanut is dating somebody back then who may be Mike's, hold on to your head, future great-granddaughter. Ow.
Ow.
I hate time travel stuff. I hate it so much. And Pearl calls the satellite again to swear she's never going to stop chasing Mike, which leads to more seasons of bad movies and robot hijinks for the rest of us, so we're all happy.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Next week on the 13 Report, it's the film that Kim has a certain trigger in that is going to drive everybody crazy. We'll be talking about Peter Graves, Mr. Ernest Peter Graves, in Beginning of the End. Always hate it when we lose big performers, especially ones unexpectedly, and that is what happened with this one. And you begged me not to continue making jokes about it because we could have made it a Francisco Franco thing. but it's out of disrespect because they first declared him has passed away, and then no, he's not dead yet, and then okay, yeah, he passed away.
Yeah.
Tom Petty was 66 years old and one of the greatest rockers of all time. You have a lot more to say about this, so go ahead.
Tom Petty, as you mentioned, one of the best rockers of all time. Obviously, the lead singer of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, member of one of the founders of the Traveling Wilburys. He was found unconscious in his home and not breathing, in full cardiac arrest, and was taken to the UCLA Medical Center. And at first, it was announced that he had passed away, and then it was no, he's not dead. He's just clinging to life, and he was pronounced dead on October 2nd in the evening. When I heard about his passing, I was like, damn, that sucks. I really don't want this to be another one of these years where it's like we're losing this musician and that musician and this musician. Tom Petty was one of those people that he was at the beginning of the MTV revolution. You know, you couldn't get away from his video for You Got Lucky. One of those post-apocalyptic videos that everybody seemed to be doing at the time. Although that one did have footage from Battlestar Galactica in it, which made it a little different.
It did?
Yeah, it did.
I don't remember that. Oh, well.
It's on a video
It's been
screen.
a long time since I've seen it, so.
My favorite Tom Petty video was Don't Come Around Here No More.
That was the Alice in Wonderland
Yes, which
video,
is a kind of twistedly weird Alice in Wonderland sort of thing with Tom Petty as the Mad Hatter in the video. And the end of the video, Tom and the other Wonderland residents partaking of eating Alice, who has been transformed mostly into a cake, Alice being played by a young woman in her 20s. Great singer, amazing songs, and also someone that did some foray into acting.
Voice acting, at least.
Voice acting. He did some actual acting as well. He appeared in The Postman.
Oh, yeah. Does that count? It was a cameo.
It counts. It was on screen.
All right.
Although it does kind of, from the dialogue, it almost makes it sound like he's playing himself.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. You mentioned he did some voice work. He did voice work for The Simpsons and also on King of the Hill. There is never going to be another artist like Tom Petty.
No.
There just won't.
My favorite Tom Petty song remains Refugee. I always loved that song. They played a really terrific live version of it on the radio the morning after he passed. The video, though, that I think stands out more than anything, and you would agree with this, I think, is Mary Jane's Last Dance, which you found to be incredibly creepy.
I think that was the point.
Yeah, I know.
Mary
he had a reputation for doing whacked out videos, so.
Yeah, when you see the video for the first time, actually, if you see the video over and over again, it's definitely one of those videos where you're like, what the hell? Mary Jane's Last Dance, at least the video, deals with the whole idea of a gentleman played by Petty who is works in a morgue. He's an assistant at a morgue, and winds up falling in love with one of the morgue's customers. I don't know how else to word it.
With a corpse played by Kim Basinger.
Yes, with a beautiful woman's corpse, played by Kim Basinger, and he takes her body from the morgue and acts like she's still alive. Has them watching TV together.
His own Evita.
Huh?
Oh, you haven't heard that story?
Oh, yeah. Dressing her up as in a bridal gown, dancing with her. You get the feeling he's almost trying to will her back to life, or something. I don't know. And then at the end of the video, he sets her body adrift in what looks to be a pond. And her eyes open up, and that's the end of the video.
Yeah,
it's creepy as hell. It's awesome and mesmerizing, but it is creepy as hell. There will never be another Tom Petty.
No.
And I think that that's a sad statement, but also at the same time, I think it's, When
somebody has their own legacy, it's always good that there won't be another one.
Yeah.
There won't be somebody trying to usurp the crown.
Yeah.
And Tom Petty was one of those people. We will miss him very much.
Yep.
That's just kind of just about do it for this week's show. Before we go, we wanted to address, as we said at the top of the show, the horrific events of last Sunday night, Monday morning in Vegas. 59 people dead, over 450 injured, all from one lone shooter, it looks like, at a country music festival. This was one of the most horrific things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And we haven't really had time to comment on it since the last show we did came out before it happened. It's just, I think it devastated everybody.
It's
one of those things that you wake up to and wonder what the hell's happening with this world.
Yeah, it definitely is. There's so many people whose lives have been destroyed by the actions of, as far as we know right now, one evil individual.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to talk about him.
I don't remember his name anyway.
We're not going to talk about him. What we are going to talk about are the people that risked their own lives to save other people.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, risked their own lives to save the lives of a total stranger. A person that just happened to be next to them at a concert when bullets started raining down, and people, grabbed other people and ran or covered them with their own bodies and stuff like that.
Perhaps the best tribute to the entire thing happened on Saturday Night Live when Jason Aldean, who was on stage at the time the shootings began, and got a lot of flack from creeps and trolls on the internet for not jumping into the crowd and helping when they were pushing him off stage to protect him.
Well, not only that, he doesn't have an S on his chest, and he's not bulletproof.
No. Aldean started off Saturday Night Live cold with a tribute to the Vegas victims and the spirit of America in the aftermath by playing Tom Petty's "I Won't Back Down," which I thought was a brilliant way to say tribute to Mr. Petty also. And it was I guess quite a magic moment on a show which is just so mean-spirited anymore that you can't get past it. And I'm just not saying that as in any particular political supporter. I just don't like it. I haven't liked Saturday Night Live since the Not Ready for Primetime Players era way back in the late 70s. I haven't watched it that much. And now they're just so angry and bitter and all their stuff. I mean, not to take away from Alec Baldwin's performance as Donald Trump. He's absolutely hysterical. But it's like, it's so, the show's tone overall over the years has just become one mean-spirited mess.
Right.
I mean, we've said that over and over again.
Yeah.
And now this was a great way to start that off.
Yeah. To the people who have lost family members, we are so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And to the people who are going to have to deal with this for the rest of their lives and what they went through.
Mm-hmm. You can do it.
You can do it.
We know this. We went through Boston.
Yeah.
We went through the marathon in 2013.
Rely on your friends and your family. If you're hurting, find someone to talk to. You will find people that will listen. And Vegas, you will recover from this.
Yeah. Next week on Subject Cinema, we will continue our Screen Screams shows with the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yes, the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and the very different versions that have been done over the years of this classic tale of good and evil.
Plus all the usual stuff we've been doing the last few weeks. And don't forget to check out all of our other shows. Subject Cinema is not alone on PNRNetworks. We also have Platinum Rose's Garden coming back this coming week for the season premiere.
Yes, Platinum Rose's Garden, which is my supernatural podcast, will be returning this weekend. We will be kicking off season 13 of Supernatural with episode 1, Lost and Found. So I hope you guys will come and listen to my episode recap and whatever else happens to be flitting through my brain that day.
PRG is not safe for work.
No.
So Be sure you know that when you go over
I
to PlatinumRoseGarden.com.
Yep.
Cavebabble with Eric and Valerie Lyon, continuing to do new shows every now and then. And Comic Grotto with Aunt Bee and Pee-wee doing their comic show at ComicGrotto.com, Cavebabble at Cavebabble.com. And here at eCinemaOne, you can join me on Tuesdays for Tuesday Digidex, the rundown of the home video releases. On Friday, with 3 Minute Weekend, the rundown of the theaters releases to theaters, and every other Wednesday through the end of the year for Catastrophe Vortex, my spin on all things disaster movies.
Yep.
We
also have our smaller show that we do during the week, our countdown show.
Oh yes, and Front Row 5 and 10 is back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Front Row 5 and 10, which is our list show.
Normally on Thursdays. The season premiere was on Saturday.
Yeah. Where we have either 2 5s or 1 10 top 10 list of dealing with movies, TV, comics, any other thing we're thinking of, music.
This past week we
like
did
that.
comic strips. This coming week is our favorite Peanuts TV specials.
Yep.
And we got a lot more, and that's also at eCinemaOne.com.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
No, I think that'll do it.
Let's move on out of here then. For Subject Cinema, I'm T.C. Kirkham.
I'm Kim Brown.
May your popcorn always be buttered.
And may your roses always be in bloom.
Are you sure he's not 4?
Shut up.
You have been listening to Subject Cinema with hosts T.C. Kirkham and Kim Brown. Subject Cinema is produced by PNRNetworks, Boston, Massachusetts, which is solely responsible for its content. Subject Cinema theme performed by Eric Lyon. Subject Cinema is recorded and produced using Sony Vegas products. Subject Cinema is copyright 2017 by PNRNetworks under a Creative Commons license. Check out a new episode of Subject Cinema every weekend. Until next time, this is Bob Taylor for Subject Cinema, and we'll see you at the movies.
That's all.
Podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.
PNR.